Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another engaging episode of the Let's Talk Show here on UrbanCast. This morning, we're going to be focusing in on an issue that directly impacts our communities, and that big issue is flooding and drainage concern. As we prepare for the upcoming combined neighborhood community group over at Scott Ollie Baptist Church, we're going to delve into the details of local planning and residents' collaboration can drive meaningful change to this whole big process. If you guys could make sure you share this broadcast and make sure everyone out there who hears about it knows about it. So if you live somewhere in that southeast Alexandria area, Acadian Village, Samtown Woodside, the Sonia Quarters, you guys probably should listen in and hear what Jonathan has to talk about. Good morning there, Jonathan. How are you?
Good morning, Jack. I'm doing great, man. Thanks for the opportunity.
Can you tell us a little bit? We're gonna jump, but if you could quickly tell us a little bit about the RAPC Area Planning Commission and what you guys do, and specifically what we're doing here with this drainage and this drainage project that we have going on.
Absolutely. So the RAPC Area Planning Commission is a very multifaceted organization. Some of you may know us for building code enforcement, development, permitting, things like that. But we also do GIS. We also do floodplain management. We also do transportation, and we also do transportation planning, and we also do rural public transit service operating in Natchitoches Parish. So some of our programs serve the entire 10 or 11 parish Central Louisiana region. Some of our programs only serve what's called the metropolitan planning area. And so one of the things that I do in my role as Chief Transportation Officer here at the RAPC Area Planning Commission is I help administer what's called the Alexandria-Pineville Metropolitan Planning Organization. So that area roughly covers about a 360 square mile area that is dealing with, let's just say, starting in Creola, just north of the parish line, includes Ball, and includes the Tioga area, it includes Pineville, and includes Alexandria, and parts of rural Rapides Parish. Mm-hmm. Inside that area is where we focus what are called our apportioned transportation dollars that are given to us by FHWA and FTA. And so our role is to coordinate with the public, to do planning processes, to identify projects that could be used or implemented using this funding. And so on the other hand, we also coordinate with all the elected officials, engineers. So we're coordinating with the DOTD district here in Alexandria. We're coordinating with DOTD in Baton Rouge. We're coordinating with FHWA. We're coordinating with FTA. We're coordinating with all the mayors. And again, they're engineers, depending on the project in the committee. One of the projects that we got into, we started this March 2020. Called, the full name is the Improving Transportation Resiliency Through Stormwater Mitigation, but we call it the MPA Stormwater Study. Mm-hmm. MPA again stands for the Metropolitan Planning Area, and so it's kind of dual purpose here for this study. The first one is to kind of complement what the state was already doing with this Louisiana Watershed Initiative, but we wanted to take it a step further for the Metropolitan Planning Area and do this study. So the study itself consists of basically two parts, right? The first part is let's identify existing conditions, and we did that through a lot of extensive work out in the field. So measuring culverts, catch basins, sediment built up in drainage canals, bayous, laterals. We looked at watershed models developed by the Army Corps of Engineers through consistent studies and plans done in the past. And we created a brand new model, and it's called the hydraulic and hydrologic model. So what that is, it has multiple purposes in it itself. So the first one is to give us a clear picture for the data perspective on what those existing conditions are. Shows us where the water is piling up, what is it running into, and then on the other hand, it's going back and saying, okay, once we've identified improvements, let's go ahead and throw them in the model and see if they're going to make a difference before we go any further. Because we want to have not only just projects, but we want to have projects that are going to have an impact, a demonstrated impact. But to get to those projects, that's the other part of the program, which is engaging the public. So we've had 2 prior rounds of open houses we've just kept them pretty much on a large scale. So you take that metro area right in the middle is the Red River. So we had Red River North, Red River South. Red River North, we had the first round out in October, second round in November. Red River South, the same thing, October, then November. But at the end of those planning studies, for those areas that we had participation in, we did identify projects, but we also understood that we were missing input from an area, from basically the southern part of our metropolitan planning area. That's why we started working together and wanted to engage with the neighborhood watch groups to identify, a location that we can have this next open house. And this event is designed to not only inform the public about what our project is and what we're hoping to achieve, but also solicit from them their input. So where should we focus? What types of drainage improvements would you prefer to have? And at the same time, start that delicate conversation about ways that we can go about as a community, not just in Alexandria or Pineville, but as the metropolitan planning area, as the greater Central Louisiana region. How can we start that conversation about ways to create dedicated sources to help fund improvements to the drainage system that's affecting everybody in this area? And so, the open house, the days of having the big public meeting with the single microphone and having the keynote speaker, come and sit for an hour or two and listen, we don't want that. That's not effective anymore. What we want is we want to be engaging with our groups. We want to go out into the communities that we serve, and we want to work with the folks. Again, it's a two-way street. There's a lot of information that folks simply just don't know. How would you know if you don't know?
Right.
So one part is letting people know, here's what's going on. Here's the existing conditions. This is what the model's showing us. How does that relate to your experience? Help us corroborate what we see in this model. But then again, we want to learn your preferences. Not everybody wants, an open detention pond next to their house.
Right.
Not everybody thinks we should all focus on the same critical pieces of public infrastructure, schools, hospitals, and things like that. We want to take this input, the preferences, and turn that into, or translate is the word I've been using, into a project that is a regionally significant project that we can then pursue with public input, with the model to back it up for the benefit cost analysis, go out and pursue those federal or potentially state flood mitigation or drainage improvement dollars to implement these improvements. And again, we want to be able to have the conversation and to keep it focused. We're really just going in to hear from them, but at the same time, folks also need to know what's out there. What are the options? And
Right.
Ask those questions to us and our team that's been helping us put this study together, the model, and then the final product of, what they may have, regarding how it's affecting them at the neighborhood, at the block level, at the community level. So, but it's about closing that gap. It's about communicating, and it's about trying to take those needs, those wants, those concerns, and translate that into projects that we can work with our partners at the MPO level, at the community level, at the state level, at the federal level, and turn them into something that's going to happen.
So in essence, then, Jonathan, you need this feedback from the community members. Number one, just to know that there are issues that are there, but then also you guys can take this information once they begin to tell you, yeah, I'm really being impacted here. You are looking at projects across the board, and now by knowing their concerns, you can fit that into your model and say, hey, here's some of the things that need to be done first, or we're going to work on X, and hopefully when we work on this, it's going to alleviate this. And you'll kind of even understand what the download and the downstream implications of implementing certain little parts first. You might learn that, hey, we really need to talk about this over here first, because it's going to cause a major problem otherwise if we don't.
That's right. And that's the thing, some of these projects, depending on the scale, take years to develop. I mean, years, 3 to 5. Some of them take a decade to get implemented. And the worst thing that could possibly happen is to get down the road 5, 8 years from now with a project that's getting ready to let, and people come out and say, or not know anything about it, but not really have a chance to participate in that planning process. But even more so, to have a project that's implemented and then to realize it's not really making as much of a difference as is intended.
Right.
And so part of it is, that's the other part with that model, is we want to be able to run it in a scenario to say, hey, we notice the water's piling up right here at this particular culvert. The culvert may be undersized. What happens if we bump up the size? What happens if we add another one? How does that affect the downstream? How does that affect the flow of water out of this neighborhood? And in some cases, it's as simple as just getting the water from one side of the road to the other. But instead of us going out and making a bunch of estimates and assumptions, we want to be able to model that. And at the same time, most of your large scale federal and state planning projects now require what's called a benefit cost analysis. So we have to do that engineering work anyway. So it kind of gives us a leg up. On one hand, we've consulted the public. We've worked with them to identify what improvements can be implemented. We then go and take those improvements, run it. If it does have a benefit, we've got 60% of the groundwork done to get that application finished and across the submitted successfully. So, and again, it just depends on the project and it depends on the scale. So, there are some improvements, low scale improvements, that can be done easily more than others. Upgrading pumps, adding a generator here, those kinds of things. Building a new station or outfall improvements. Those things take time, take a lot of money. And so that's where it kind of gets to be challenging for folks in our area, is that we don't have all the resources available to be able to go out and just build things. We have to seek federal funding assistance, state funding assistance. And so that's where it kind of takes the time here. But we're hoping to do this similar to what we did in a what was a different kind of project, but it was called the 2017 Comprehensive Resiliency Plan for the parish. We did that project, and it came out with series of projects that were recommended at the end. And so this was a bit of a different kind of nature. It wasn't trying to address things at the metropolitan planning area. This is more projects that were identified through past historical flood issues. And it's really rewarding to find that most of those projects are in the process of being implemented or have been implemented. This study being one of those recommendations. It basically came out and said, we got to do a deeper dive to identify these projects that are ready. So, and again, having public input is critical. And that's one of the reasons why we're just excited to have this next open house at New Scott Alley Baptist Church. It's a community that's engaged, that wants to participate in the planning process, that wants to share their experiences, their insight, their suggestions, their concerns through the planning process. And that's what we want to do. We want to take that. We want to make sure that our input, our model, our study is well-rounded, has input from, throughout the MPA, and that we're able to then take that information and translate it into projects.
Right. So Jonathan, for all practical purposes, right now, getting input, from residents within the southeast corridor of Alexandria specifically. If we, just say for instance, if you, for example, learn something there that is really critical, causing tons of backup, how does it look when you have to, and just say, for instance, somewhere else within the city, someone was saying, hey, we thought that this project was going to happen, but now that there's new information over here, and if you implement this thing over in this other location, but it's going to make the problem over here even worse. How does that work? How do you guys come back and explain to the public the reason why you're doing what you're doing?
Well, that's kind of lead into the model there for part of that. But, it's one thing that's important to note, that when you're going out and you're especially pursuing federal dollars to implement these improvements, they're not going to award anything to any project that's going to speed up the flow of water to another area. So that's why we have to have the model in place to see it's going to have a demonstrated impact. But let's fast forward for a minute. Let's say we get the study finished and we identify, hopefully we've got 5 solid projects, potentially 6 solid projects that'll have a regionally significant impact. The next step is for us to start working with our MPO members. So, our committee for the MPO itself, consists of representatives from the City of Alexandria, City of Pineville, Town of Ball, Rapides Parish Police Jury, DOTD District 8, England Authority, and the Port, in addition to ex officio members, which are from DOTD, Baton Rouge, FHWA, and FTA. So our deal is to start running it through them with those projects. So it's another layer of it being vetted, and those meetings are also open to the public. But let's say we have a project that has a demonstrated positive impact to the region. That's where we want to start putting our focus. So to get these opportunities, you have to find a federal opportunity that lines up for this specific project, and then find all the things that are going to help make sure that that project is a successful application, because we're competing with other areas in the entire country. So we've got a lot of things that we can do in our area that makes our projects more competitive. But you got to keep in mind that we're competing in some cases, depending on the federal pot of money, with other parts of even our own state that have may have a greater need, like the New Orleans area or coastal Louisiana or something like that. So we really have to make sure that our project is going to have an overall benefit to the community as a whole. Again, federal wouldn't even go to the next step if it has a demonstrated negative impact on folks downstream. And so that's part of that model. There is one part that has that, again, that existing conditions. This is where all the historic flooding is taking place. And then we have one that's called particle tracing, where you're actually seeing the flow of water through the computer simulation and where that's piling up and stacking up. So there's some areas that we really hope to mitigate with one larger scale project. There are some projects that may have additional positive community input, or benefits. So in other words, we may be going in and getting this funding to deal with drainage, but the benefit could be we're improving the road, we're improving, access, we're improving mobility, we're improving, potential other areas of the community at the neighborhood level, at the regional level that could really have a positive impact. So, but it starts with this step. We've got to start with the plan to identify those projects, because just having them in a plan makes them eligible. Some of that is a qualifying factor alone for some of our opportunities that we hope to explore to implement these improvements that will be identified in a future date.
Well, I'm just so glad that you guys could adjust the schedule a little bit to get this additional input that you guys need to make that model a whole lot better. And I know we're coming up to that 11:30 time mark. So if you could go ahead and let us know when this meeting is, where it's at, and all that kind of good stuff, we'll definitely try to make sure we get that information out for you guys.
Awesome. So the meeting itself, Tuesday next week, New Scott Ollie Baptist Church.
I'm laughing because you say Tuesday.
Yeah, well,
we know the weather.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We'll add that caveat in a minute, but it's a New Scott Ollie Baptist Church. We're opening the doors at 5. And we want to make sure that we're communicating with folks that this isn't a 2-hour sit down and listen to somebody talk. This is a show, learn about the project, move through the process, ask questions, share your input. And then when you're done, hang out, visit with your neighbors, your community members, or if you got to go on to the next step or get back home because it's probably going to be really cold. Okay. But we will be watching the weather, and if it does become something where they're shutting everything down because the roads are hazardous, we're just going to reschedule. We're not going to cancel the meeting, but we will have to do that out of just the air of public safety. But we will be watching that weather, and we'll make that call when we get closer to it.
Okay. Sounds like a winner. Well, Jonathan, I definitely, and that meeting is going to be next Tuesday at 5 o'clock at New Scott Ollie Baptist Church on Willow Glen River Road.
That's right. It's an open house. Stop on by, learn about it, share about it. And then, if you got other things you got to do that evening, go for it.
All right. Well, Jonathan, I definitely want to say thank you for your time, and thank you for the work that you're doing here in the community.
Thank you, Jack. Have a good one.
All right. You have a good one as well. I'm going to go ahead and end this stream.